Namo Namaha, Bhavtam Sarvesham Hartam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving on in a series learning Sanskrit through Gita, today we will decode 26 shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. From grammatic point of view, this particular shloka is very easy to understand, very easy to decode. And contextually, this is the continuation of what we saw in the previous shloka, the 25th shloka. So what is it and how does it connect from the previous shloka? This all we will see when we decode the shloka. So without wasting any more time, let's start the video for today. Okay, so this is the shloka. Let me go through the shloka once. Ath chainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho naivam shochitum arhasi. Okay, so this here is the original shloka and this of course is the Sandhi Vichcheda version of the shloka. As you can see, only two Sandhis are happening in this shloka and both of them are Vriddhi Sandhi. So cha enam, due to Vriddhi Sandhi, it is changing into chainam and same goes for here. Na evam, due to Vriddhi Sandhi, it is becoming Naivam. Okay, so these are the only two instances where a Sandhi is happening because if you see this word, Shochitum Arhasi, so this is also two different words, Shochitum and Arhasi. But again, this is not a Sandhi, it is just a Halanta consonant combining with the adjacent Varna. Okay, so combination is there, but it is not a Sandhi. But as always, we have the PDF sheet along with the video that you can download from the link in the description box. That PDF sheet contains all the Sandhi details and word by word breakdown of the entire shloka. So that will help for your own practice purpose. Let us directly now move on to the decoding of the shloka. Okay now, and as we generally do, that we find a Kriya Pada. And with that Kriya Pada, we generally start decoding any Sanskrit words. So from the first line in the shloka, we get this Kriya Pada Manyase. And manyase, this simply means that you believe. That a speaker is directly saying to the listener that you believe or you think. And again, we know that this shloka, Krishna is the speaker and Arjuna is the listener. And this form, this is coming from the dhatu, man dhatu. Again, man dhatu means to think, to believe, to realize in that sense. And this particular dhatu is being modified using lat lakara and second person, that is Madhyama Purush. Why? Because the listener is associated with this action. And then singular, ekvachanam. And since this particular dhatu is the Atmanepadi dhatu, so in all these three properties, this takes the form manyase. Okay, that you think, you believe. Okay, so I hope this is clear. And see, in bracket, I have put this yadyapi. That is, yadyapi translates as even if. Okay, this is a avya, this is a indeclinable in Sanskrit. And the reason I have put this in bracket is, it is not given in shloka, but this is implied in the shloka. Because when you will translate, when we will do the anvaya, then you will see it is sort of implied there. And actually, we also find its opposite pair, tathapi. We have this pair, no, yadyapi tathapi. Even if, then also, nevertheless. So in that sense, this entire shloka is structured. So just to get clearer meaning out of this shloka, I have just put this in bracket, that yadyapi manyase, even if you believe in that sense. Okay, and now the obvious question is that kam manyase, that even if you believe, what? And the response is enam manyase, enam. So from the past few shlokas, we are continuously seeing the use of this particular sarvanama. And from this shabdarupa, from this form, we already know that the pratipadika is etad. Etat pratipadika. This is a sarvanama to represent this. And this enam, this form is the dvitiya vibhakti, the second word case, singular ekvachanam form. Okay, because this enam, this represents again the object, the karma of this kriya. That even if you believe this, and with this, we again already know that we are talking about this self. The self, the Atma here is implied. Okay, so the same theme we are seeing from past few shlokas. So I hope all of you are already clear of this particular sarvanama. Enam manyase, this self. We are talking about the self, the Atma. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna that Arjuna, even if you believe this self, and again he will complete the sentence by saying that even if you believe this self to be whatever he will describe in the shloka. So for that, I'm asking the question that kidrisham, that this self is to be understood as what? To be what? For which we get the response that enam nitya jatam nityam ritam va manyase. Okay, so see here Krishna is using two different complements to describe this self, this Atma. So one is nitya jatam. Nitya jatam means something that is constantly being born. And another is nityam ritam. Nityam ritam is something that is constantly dying. Okay, so he is using these two different ways to describe this self, and that is why he is using va. Va is simply an avya and indeclinable that translates as or. So basically what Krishna is saying that yadyapi manyase, even if you believe this self, enam, to be constantly being born or to be constantly dying. So this is the sense Krishna is trying to make. And now you see these two words. So jatam. Jatam, this is obviously coming from the dhatu jan dhatu, that means to be born. And mritam, this is coming from the dhatu mrit, that means to die. Okay, and just by looking at their form jatam and mritam, you can already identify that both of them are kridanta, and both of them are being modified using the same krit pratyay, the ta pratyay. So jan dhatu, when modified using ta pratyay, this is the pratipadika we get jata. And jata, this will describe anything that has been born. Okay, that's something that is born. And similarly, mrita dhatu, when modified using ta pratyay, the pratipadika we get is mrita. And mrita again will describe anything that has been dead, that has died in that sense. And since we are using both this kridanta to describe this self, so we are again using the same vibhakti vachana. So this pratipadika is also in the dvitiya vibhakti ekvacham, changing into jatam, and this mrita changing into mritam, just to match the word form of its noun, of its sarvanama in this case. Okay. And then with both this kridanta, we have this nitya. And nitya, this simply means some action that is constant, or something that is eternal, something that is eternally happening in that sense. So if I say nitya jatam, so I basically am saying something that is constantly being born. Okay, constantly being born simply meaning something that is in this cycle of birth and rebirth, of birth again. So in that cycle. And same goes for mritam, that if I say nityam mritam, so something that is constantly dying. Basically again something that is in a cycle of death, then again taking birth, then again dying. So with this nitya jatam and nitya mritam, he is basically talking about the cycle of samsara, the endless cycle of birth and death. Krishna is referring to that. Okay, so I hope the structure of these words and the meaning behind this line is clear. By the way, this nityam mritam, and in the shloka you have this combination, the hyphen I am putting to separate the pada, but this is a compound word, a samasa, nitya jatam. So basically the samasa is also conveying the same meaning, nityam jatam, that the birth that is constantly happening, nityam jatam. But it is just that these two padas are being joined together into a samasta pada, into a samasa. So again they join in their pratipadika form, from which we will get this samasta pada nitya jata, that a constant birth, constantly being born. And then since we are using this to describe enam, so same thing, it will also take the dvitiya vibhakti ekvachanam form nitya jatam. So this nitya jatam as a samastapada, as a samasa, and nityam jatam, they both are conveying the same meaning. And this is what is happening in the shloka, that nitya jatam, it is combined in a samastapada, and nityam mritam, they are kept separated. Okay, and why the poet may have done so? So again, to fit all the pada into a meter, and whatever possible reasons he may have. But the point is, both of them, they are representing the same kind of information. But anyways, with this, what Krishna is saying to Arjuna is that Arjuna, even if you believe this self, this Atma, to be subjected to the cycle of birth and death. So even if you believe the self is subjected to such a cycle. And then he further continues and says, Tathapi, nevertheless, na arhasi, you aren't qualified. So tathapi, again, as we discussed earlier, this is an avyay, and this simply means that nevertheless. Okay. And then this kriya pada arhasi. So we already saw in some of the previous shloka very recently, this is coming from arha dhatu. Arha dhatu means to be eligible for something, to be qualified for something in that sense. And again, since Krishna is saying this for Arjuna, so just like manyase, this also is taking the same form, lat lakara, madhyama purush, because Arjuna, the direct listener, he is associated with the action. So madhyama purush and ekvachanam. Okay. And manyase, so that was an atmanepadi dhatu. So it took the form manyase. But arha, this is a simple parasmayapadi dhatu, so it becomes arhasi in these properties. Arhasi simply means you are qualified for something. And since a na is preceding in the shloka, so na arhasi, you aren't qualified, you aren't eligible for something. Whatever that thing is, we will see further in the shloka. So if we move on, the question is kim kartum, that you are not qualified to do what? So you are not qualified to shochitum. Shochitum simply means to grieve. Okay, to grieve, to lament in that sense. And this particular form also, this entire combination, Chochitumna Arhasi, we very recently saw. So I hope a lot of you will remember this. This particular form is again a Kridanta. This is coming from Shuch Dhatu. That means the same thing, to grieve, to lament for something. And this particular Dhatu is being modified using Tumun Pratyay. Why? Because when we want to show the purpose of some action, so then we use this tumun pratyay. So you are not qualified to do what? So you are not qualified to shochitum. Shochitum simply means you are not qualified to grieve. Okay, and then we have this evam, that evam shochitum na arhasi, that you are not qualified to grieve thus. You are not qualified to grieve like this. This evam, this conveys thus or like this. Okay, or we can say that you are not qualified to grieve in this manner. So evam, this represents all this. Thus, like this, in this manner, in this way, all this. Okay, it is also an avyaya, an indeclinable. And why Krishna is using this? Because in the first chapter already we saw how Arjuna broke down. So basically Krishna is referring to that condition, that Arjuna, you are not qualified to act like this. You are not qualified to break down or grieve like this. So that is why he is saying that evam shochitum na arhasi. So in that sense. Okay, and with this we have covered all the padas. Let us see the anvay along with the translation now. And now see, in this shloka you have these two words in the starting, athacha. So why? Because this particular shloka is a continuation of what we saw in the previous, the 25th shloka. So think of it like this, that having said the 25th shloka, Krishna continues, and that is why we are saying athacha. Cha is basically and atha, this translates as moreover. Okay, moreover, and it also translates as now. Okay, so think of it like this, that from the previous shloka, we are coming into this shloka and saying, and now, and moreover, and further, in that sense. Okay, so anyways, the anvay goes like this, atacha, and moreover, yadyapi enam nitya jatam nityam mritam na manyase. Even if you believe, manyase, you believe this self, enam, you believe this self as being nitya jatam, as being constantly born, or va, you believe it to be nityamritam, you believe it to be constantly dying. Basically Krishna is saying that even if you believe this self as being constantly born or constantly dying, tathapi, nevertheless, mahabahu, this is actually coming from mahabahu. Okay, mahabahu simply means someone with mighty arms. This can also translate as someone with long arms. So someone with long arms, with mighty arms. So in that sense, mahabahu. And here, because he is addressing Arjuna with this title, so it is a Sambodhana Vibhakti. So Mahabahu in Sambodhana Vibhakti, this become Mahabahu. So that is what you see in the shloka. Simply meaning that, hey Mahabahu, or O mighty armed Arjuna in that sense. So Krishna is saying, Tathapi Mahabahu, nevertheless, O mighty armed, Tvam evam shochitum na arhasi. You should not grieve like this. You are not qualified to act like this. You should not act or behave or grieve in this manner. That is what Krishna is saying here. So this simple shloka again is very interesting, because in the previous shloka, Krishna said to Arjuna that the self is unconditioned. Because when he said that avyakta, so he basically meant that the self is beyond the five senses, is beyond the sense cognition. And then he said the self is achintya, it is incomprehensible. So by that he meant that the self is even beyond mind and intellect. And then lastly he said that the self is avikarya, it is immutable. So it is also beyond time and causality. So with that Krishna basically said that this self, this Atma, is without any condition of any sort. So through the previous shloka, Krishna first tried to persuade Arjuna that try to have that higher perspective. But in this particular shloka, Krishna is also acknowledging the fact that Arjuna might be struggling to have that perspective because he still is involved in this materialistic point of view. And what is a materialist point of view? It is that whatever he sees, he believes, and nothing else. So a materialist person, he is not ready to accept that there is something that is beyond sense cognition, that there is something that is beyond mind and intellect. The materialist person, he cannot believe in that because he believes what he perceives through his own senses. So Krishna is also acknowledging that fact that, okay Arjuna, even if you are stuck in that materialistic point of view, and even if you think that this life is nothing but a constant cycle of birth, then death, then rebirth, and then death again. Because that is what we see in this world, right? Everything, it comes, then it perishes away, then it comes again, then again perishes. So it is a continuous cycle of birth and death. So Krishna is saying that Arjuna, even if you believe that this world or this self is subjected to this continuous cycle of birth and death, then also you should not grieve. Because if that birth and death, if that is inevitable, then why you are grieving? Because if something that is born has to die, that is inevitable, then what is the point of grieving? So he's also taking that argument here. So very interestingly, he gave both the arguments, that if you can have a higher perspective, what he showed in the previous shloka, that the self is without any condition. And then from this shloka, he's also taking a materialist perspective, that okay, even if you think that this self or this world is only that much as you can see, then also what is the point of grieving if everything is inevitable? So a very simple but very profound argument given by Krishna, and he continues the same argument in the next shlokas also, as we will see. So that was it. But anyways, I hope apart from this, the entire grammar part also was clear. If any doubt, so you can download the PDF sheet and you can go through it. I'll meet you in another shloka in another video. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punha milamaha. Dhanyavad.